Antonio Lucio is a visionary marketing leader with a passion for driving meaningful change in the industry. As the current Chief Marketing Officer of HP, he brings a wealth of experience from top global brands like Meta, Visa, and PepsiCo, shaping the future of marketing through innovation and purpose-driven strategies. Beyond his corporate leadership, Antonio is the founder of 5S, a company dedicated to elevating the marketing profession by fostering transformation and expanding opportunities for all. His deep commitment to creating more equitable and representative marketing practices has made him a respected voice in the industry. In recognition of his impact, he was inducted into the Marketing Hall of Fame in 2022. He also shares his insights as an executive fellow at Yale School of Management, helping to inspire the next generation of leaders. But most of all, Antonio is a wonderful husband, father, and friend. Please enjoy my time with Antonio. Hey y'all, let's go there.
I'm going to start this podcast actually where I think we should probably end it, but I'm going to start it backwards. And that's by saying thank you. And you have been an incredible support to me and have shown me tremendous love and kindness without ever physically meeting me during one of the hardest times in my life. And you continually sent me notes and messages, checking in on me and making me laugh. And I'm just grateful for you. I don't know how I got so lucky, and I don't know how I'll ever repay you.
The pleasure is completely mine. You're a terrific lady. And I hope that we do get to meet in real life and have the conversations that we're about to have now that we should have had in person.
Totally. Yeah, in our preparation, we realized they were finally sitting down and having the conversation we probably should have had years ago.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I cannot wait to get to know you even better. I will say we were introduced by a mutual friend whom I love very much, Stacy Brown Philpott. So I just want to thank Stacy for this connection. And we've already told our audience in the introduction all about your bio and all your accolades, and it's really larger than life in terms of what you've achieved. But I wanted to talk a little bit about where you are now today. You're back at HP. So in a bit of a boomerang move, which is not common for CMOs, you're back at HP. How did that come to be?
I guess now I am officially a certified corporate masochist for now.
That's amazing.
It's I love our craft. I think I've been blessed with incredible opportunities to lead global teams, and that is something that I love doing. But the story behind the story is I finished, let's say, phase one of my career as the global CMO of what it's called now Meta, which I was responsible for all their apps. So Instagram and WhatsApp and Messenger and Facebook. At the time, we were in the middle of the pandemic, and I came to terms with a very interesting fact. Mark was not even 40, and he could still use 20 more years to figure out what his platform was all about, fix whatever needs fixing, evolving whatever needed to be evolved. And I didn't have the time. I was 60, and I said, I really have a decision to make. Do I follow this individual to help him achieve that particular vision, which is going to take a while, or do I do something completely different? And again, at that time, it was the pandemic. We all felt significantly more reflective because of the situations that we were all living. And I made the decision that it was time for me to leave the corporate world, and I started a program to build capability. At the time, it was very specifically focused on women and people of color, and it was with an institution that you know very well, the Aspen Institute, as well as the Yale School of Management. I did that for about 3 years, and it was incredibly rewarding. We ended up with 20 of the biggest corporations, Anheuser-Busch, Target, and Meta, and HP, and MasterCard. I mean, all the good ones. Around 400 leaders went through the program, and the thing that I enjoyed the most was that I had the opportunity to do one-on-one mentoring sessions with all these people. So I got to really know and have a clear pulse of what middle managers were feeling in corporate America during the pandemic and right after the pandemic. And that's a privileged sort of position. After I did it for 2 years, I was beginning to learn things about myself that I had not learned. Everybody fantasizes about the academic world and about teaching and about consulting, which is what everybody thinks that they want to do. So I was able to build an amazing portfolio, as they say, or as they call it. I was executive fellow at Yale. I had my program, LEAP, and then I was participating in some very interesting boards, all within the ecosystem. I had built it in such a way that all the different pieces, academic, my program, and boards were all going to be able to fit each other within the same sort of ecosystem. It was all within the marketing environment, if you will. But I came to terms with several things. Number one, I am not a good consultant.
I can relate to this.
I could be remunerated by it. People would like the fact that I was in a meeting. I did not enjoy being a consultant at all. So whether I was consulting to my people or to the companies that at the program that I was doing, or doing the board work that I was doing, or even the work that I was doing with Yale, it's not something that I enjoy very much. I'm an operator. I'm a hands-on type of individual. So that was point number one. Point number two is I was feeling scattered, meaning I was here and tomorrow I was there and the other day I was over there. And for a lot of people in my generation, that's like the ultimate dream situation, where you have a lot of flexibility and you're switching environments and you're switching topics and you're switching people. For them, that's like the ultimate intellectually stimulating turf. For me, I was feeling completely scattered, and I needed a bit of an anchor. Yeah, intellectually you could put the anchor wherever you want, but I mean physical anchor. And the last part, Carla, which is probably the biggest part, I was beginning to feel very isolated. Although I was in Zoom meetings and traveling, and I was feeling isolated. I have always enjoyed being part of a meaningful ecosystem and being able to contribute to that ecosystem. For someone that in my past, 20 years ago, suffered from chronic depression, that one thing that you learn to run from like a plague is the feeling of isolation. So I was, as soon as I began to get where am I? What is this? The somber nature of it all. You have to move. And then one thing led to the other, because I have been connected with a lot of people over my whole life, and the opportunity to return to HP, a company that I always loved, working for a leader that was my peer before. Enrique is a high integrity, no nonsense, extremely capable individual. Then that was the easy part to say yes.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of blowing my mind right now because it's as if we're not even recording this podcast and you and I are having the conversation that I've probably been needing personally, because everything that you're describing about the portfolio lifestyle rings very true to me. And it's interesting because for operators, it's something that gets romanticized. Okay, one day you'll stop operating and you'll have all this freedom and you'll be able to consult and teach a course and you'll serve on boards and you'll make all this money and you'll have this total flexibility. And you actually get there and you start to do it. And it's exactly, from my experience, it's exactly as you describe. And then you begin to really grieve things like loss of team. And you start to question your purpose and what direction you're headed in. And it's not as romantic as everybody claims that it is. But yet it's this weird aspiration that people have when they reach post midlife, in particular, if you're in tech sector or an operator at the C level.
It's true. I guilty as charged. I was romanticizing that. And by the way, when it comes to portfolio, just like I'm pretty sure the one you currently have, if you're telling people, they all go like, "Oh, you are now a certified instructor at the Aspen Institute. You are participating. Oh, by the way, you have this amazing podcast." Everybody's going to go like, "Wow, oh my god!" It's not who I was, and it was very interesting. I was invited to speak actually with Caroline Everson.
Oh, wow.
Both of us had left um, uh, Meta at the time, and we were invited by a mutual acquaintance, Salman Amin, who's the CEO of a company, Platis. So he invited Caroline and her husband and Ashley and I to Prague so that we could participate with his senior management team. And he said, "Well, Antonio, you're going to have 4 hours." I'm going like, I don't know what to do in 4 hours, really. I mean, it's like that's a long period of time. It ended up being a fascinating because you have an hour of content if you're and then you have interesting conversations. Anyway, Ashley came to me to one of those dinners, those global dinners where you're seated with people from all over the world and you're having amazing conversations about what's happening in the real world. In this particular case, this individual had just come from Saudi Arabia, and he was actually telling the stuff that you don't read in the New York Times or the Washington Post, that just how life really is. And anyway, we finished the great dinner. I came back to the room, and Ashley looks at me and says, because sometimes our partners don't see us in action. And she goes like, "Wow, Antonio, you look remarkably comfortable in your own skin. Are you sure you don't miss this?" And I'm going like, "No, I don't miss this. I'm already transcended this. I have my portfolio. I'm having a direct impact on people's lives. No, I don't miss this." Carla, that night I did not sleep.
Oh,
It
she
was
called it.
she called it in ways like, when you have an amazing partner, they know you better than you know yourselves. And
Yeah.
so I did not sleep that night. And Enrique and I had been in conversations, my current boss, because I was recommending people for the job. In fact, I recommended
Yes,
your name.
you called me. Yes, I remember.
I recommended 5 all outstanding individuals with impressive resumes like you. And he was always like a little hesitant about the whole thing. And one day, right after Prague, I said to him, "Would you consider me for the job?" And then it came out of my mouth without, honestly. It was one of those things that just came out. And then he looks at me and said, "Are you serious?" And then I go like, "Let me think about it." And I said yes, because he already had in mind that he needed to combine the marketing and comms roles and corporate affairs and all that type of stuff. And so I'm back. I'm enjoying every minute of it. One thing that I have learned in this role at this historical moment of my life, Carla, is something that I had not done before. It's the first time that I have a quote unquote contract, meaning I'm going to do this for 4 years, and then there's an option to renew for one on mutual consent, but it's 4 years. So
Huh.
it's like a presidential term.
Wow.
I
Okay.
had what it has done. I've never operated like I wish I had had this mindset way before, because the moment that you have, okay, it's 4 years, you become incredibly focused and you have no time to lose. So it's almost like, okay, by the end of year one, I need to do this. By the end of year two, I need to do this. And by the end, and it's not a hypothetical, because it's a real thing.
Yeah.
So by the end of my tenure, I need to have the person in the chair. I need to have that will replace me, and it has given me a level of focus, is the right word, that I had not had before, and a sense of urgency that I had never experienced before. So the whole 4 year mindset is something that when I'm talking to CMOs or potential CMOs, you approach it this way, because it's going to help you a lot.
Yeah. I love it for two reasons. I love it for the sense of urgency, but for CMOs where the average tenure is less than 2 years, it's probably close to a year right now.
That's right.
It also sets expectations that this is going to take time. And here are the milestones along those 4 years. And we are all in alignment in terms of how we're going to see this progress over time, because you can't move a market in under a year. So that's fantastic.
And as you know, in these big organizations like the one that you used to work, and the one, just to get to know the law of the land and how things shift and how decisions are made, the difference between the real and the effective power, those things take time.
Yeah.
Take
That would have been a game changer for me. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Okay, so you're happy at HP. You're back operating. Again, a role model for me. You've had an amazing career. You're highly decorated as a marketer, and you were recently inducted into the Hall of Fame in Cannes last year as a result. And you've worked for some of the world's biggest brands, running their marketing. But you mentioned something that I don't want to speed bump over, and you and I have exchanged text messages over this, which is your mental health.
Mhm.
And you and I had never talked about this before, but I have struggled with depression too. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about that struggle and what you learned, because it's hard to operate at the levels that you operate when you're battling depression.
Yeah, well, it's easier for me to look back and say, okay, this is what happened. The truth of the matter is that when you're running, 150 miles per hour and jumping from country to country and thinking that you're Superman, it doesn't happen until it happens. So, um, in my particular case, I was making several mistakes. Number one, not being fully aware of the signals that my body was sending me. The fact that I wasn't sleeping well at night consistently, and I was blaming it to the jet lag, because I was traveling like crazy. The fact that I needed several cups of double espresso in the afternoon because I was overly tired, and I could blame it again. No, it's the jet lag. It's the this, it's the that, and the truth of the matter is that my body was signaling. Um, there are there are issues here. The fact that despite all the successes that you were talking about, the fact that I had remarried with Ashley, that we've been together for close to 30 years. I mean, this was a kind of at the midpoint of our life, and so I was very happy, and my daughters were healthy, even though everything was going well, I had this shadow. It was like a weight in my shoulder, and a very dark sense of doom that I didn't. I would play um, these movies in my head where I was going to end up a hobo in the middle of a street, and the whole world was going to discover that I was a fraud. And I could, honestly, Carla, I could feel it. I could smell it. It was almost a very physical and visceral type of feeling. And then you become to, I used to call it my dark side. And then you begin to almost make it sublime. It's like, oh, that dark side is the source of all my creativity, of all my charisma. Without it, I am going to, I cannot. And then, then one day in Brazil, very late at night, I was contemplating doing something really awful. And that's when it hit me that I needed help.
Oh my gosh.
And at the time, so the first thing was not paying attention to it and running. The second mistake that I was making was, for some, again, these are illogical stories, seeing from where I'm seeing them today, but I had created this division of professional life, personal life, and I will not blend them at all. It was almost because I'm traveling so much. When I'm home, I'm just about being home, and I never was sharing the stuff, the pressures, the trips about it. The same holds true for the work. I had kept them as completely separate worlds, and I had this impossible dream that I was going to balance, and it became almost mathematical. Okay, I gave so many hours here, now I have to give so many hours there, and again, a house divided cannot stand. Mine was a personal a personal house, completely divided, and then the last piece was this. I had this. I had a very strange relationship with my dad. He's an extremely Catholic man, old Spaniard, extremely conservative. I grew up in Puerto Rico with a significantly more liberal sort of mindset, and there was this thing that, because of he was who he was and his circumstances, and I am who I am, and my circumstances, they're completely different. But I still have images of him sitting in one of our couches, just complaining about life and about how things were wrong and should be better and all this type of things. I'm pretty sure that all he would have never admit that, but he probably suffered from severe depression.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't understand that at the time, but it was kind of like, but the whole notion of being in a chair, complaining and not acting, when it came to me, I became the opposite of that. I had to be moving and acting and solving and solving and solving and solving, because if I didn't do it, I was going to end up like him in a couch complaining and blah, 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 blah. Again, irrational stuff, but very, very, very real for me. So at the time, this was my first job as a CMO of Pepsi. It was my dream job. I was a history major. I was able to see and live everything that I had studied in college in real life. I remember going to my boss and saying, "Listen, this is happening to me. I'm suffering from depression. I need to take care of myself. I need a lateral job, or if not, I'm going to have to leave the company, because this is priority." The Mike White, to this day, he, from being vice chairman of PepsiCo, became the CEO of anyway, big company as well. And he told me, and this is why having these types of conversation is so important. He said, "Antonio, my mother used to suffer from depression. In her time, this was treated with electroshocks. said, please take care of yourself. We will find a job for you so that you can keep working with us. So I took a lateral move to a corporate job, working for the CEO, where I didn't have to travel, and I did that for about 3 years so that I could, I started with medication. I had to change my diet. I stopped drinking because the combination with the antidepressives was not a good thing. So and again, like, as everybody who's gone through either business or personal challenges understands, these things take 2 years. There is
Yeah.
no shortcut. I mean, of course you have improvements on the way, but it takes 2 years for you to say, I am in a very different place than what it was with conviction. So I did that for actually 3 years. And then when I felt healthy and strong again, then I resumed my marketing career. I switched from PepsiCo to Visa because Pepsi didn't have a global CMO role at the time. I mean, of the corporate brand. Um, and anyway, that's my story.
I'm so inspired by this because I think so many of us, myself included, would have been so afraid to have that conversation with our boss, so afraid of stepping down from a role that was our quote unquote dream job, and so afraid of hurting our career by taking care of ourselves. And in a strange way, you actually boosted your career. You helped your career by doing that. I think the other thing that's important to call out is someone once said to me that, you know, if you resist depression, it's just going to last longer. And when I was going through my depression, my coach said to me, look, you can either deal with this and lean way into it and take care of this, or you can sit on the couch for 10 years. And he said, and I've seen that happen. It's like describing how you described your father. And that scared the hell out of me. That's when I said, okay, no, I'm going to do something about this. So I'm tremendously inspired because I don't know that I would have had the courage to go to my boss and say, this is what's happening.
Carla, I wish I could tell you that it was courage. It was desperation.
Oh,
I honestly, at that moment in Rio, I thought I was going to die. So it was not. This is not a. I had no choice. Of course, we always have choice, but the way that I was seeing things, I had to fundamentally ask for help and change my life because this was not going to end well for me or for anyone in my family. The one thing, and I'm pretty sure that you have experienced this, is that after you decide to deal with it and you have the tools, and so you said, oh, and your career took off. There's a reason why my career took off. The amount of energy, emotional and physical energy that we devote to dealing with that dark side, with that depression, I had no idea. All of a sudden I'm going like, oh, wow. And I had that narrative that my creativity was tied to the dark side. It was completely the opposite. The moment that I began to see a bit more light, that I had more room, more space, more capacity, things started happening in a more meaningful sort of way. Those challenges take so much from us, and we don't even know it.
yeah, absolutely. So how do you look out for your people? Do you find yourself keeping an eye on your people for this?
What I do is I try to create the space for these conversations to happen when they need, because we have to be extremely careful because each person is different in approaching these types of situations. What I do is I am very happy to share my story, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the extraordinary of it. And believe me, like any other good story, has a bit of everything. And I create the space for these types of conversations to actually happen, because it's important. It's really really important.
So you mentioned isolation is kind of like your key. You can't be isolated. That's one of the anecdotes is to avoid isolation. But you also talked about the fact that you had separated yourself. There was the work Antonio and the home Antonio. The two would not mix. I can very much relate to this. My husband had no clue what I was dealing with at work. How did those two, I'm assuming those two eventually came together.
Oh, it's like, again, it's the stupid stories that you tell to yourself that are anchored in I don't know what, but not in reality. The truth of the matter is the type of jobs that you and I do are very interesting. So every time you want to share stuff of it, my daughters love it. Now the problem is that they gave me too many opinions that I but
That's amazing.
the fact that you're sharing the good, the bad, even the ugly,
Yeah, it's important.
it's actually a very important, super important for the family to understand. Um, and the opposite is also true, which again, I didn't share family with work either. Now it's kind of like everybody knows who Ashley is. Everybody knows my five daughters. Everybody knows whether Antonio is in his grandson's birthday. And it creates a much more fluid, natural sort of flow and conversation, which is very important. So first, the taking care of myself part. The second part was integrating um, life and work a lot more. The third one, and I think you and I spoke a bit about this, is we need to create community outside of our work. The jobs that we are asked to do, when someone said it is lonely at the top, there are days that it is extremely lonely at the top. And yes, when you have a great family and you have a great partner, you can share. But the truth of the matter, Carla, is that unless they're involved in the same business, they can empathize with you, but they cannot understand.
Yeah.
And the whole notion that you need to create a community, which for me was new at the time, create a community of people like you that are doing your same role, whatever, outside of your environment, where you can go like, oh my God, I'm having the worst day of my life, and they don't blink. And by the way, it's safe, because if you tell that to a sponsor inside the company, they may look at you a little weird. But that it is safe, and you can, again, you can get best practice. The typical that you go back and you go like, my God, am I crazy? And everybody goes, no one.
Yeah.
There were, so I'm going like, oh my God, I've been in meetings with X, Y, and Z, and I must be losing my mind because they're speaking a different language and I cannot communicate. Maybe I'm just fundamentally wrong. So you need to have people like yourself that are, like you go like, oh, Antonio, that happens all the time. That's the way that, and then you feel better. And the last part, going back to where we started, it helps with isolation. You
Yeah.
don't feel that you're alone. You have your community. And by the way, these people not only can empathize like your family can, they can actually add value to what
Yeah.
you're doing and give you perspective. Yeah, there are times when some of the members of my community will tell me, yeah, Antonio, you're losing your mind. What you're saying doesn't make sense.
And you need that.
And
You
you
need
need
people
that.
that are gonna be honest with you and not just agree with you. You can't be in an echo chamber. I call them my phone a friends. And
I love
so
it.
yeah, and so whenever something happens, I have my phone of friends, and what's amazing, it's what you're saying. Many of them have deep subject matter expertise, maybe in an area in which I don't. So sometimes it's functional knowledge that I need because something is broken and I cannot figure it out, or I want advice on a vendor or a partnership or an agency. But then sometimes it's to your point. It's like I was in this ridiculous meeting and this happened, and I will tell you a story. I was once told that I was too ambitious. I was given the feedback that I was too ambitious. I'm sure you can see why. And that feedback made me crazy. And so
Drives me crazy.
I spent the weekend really analyzing what I was doing, if I was operating from a place of blind ambition. And so I called two of my phone friends, two of my male peers. And the first one said, Carla, they would never say that to a dude.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and then the other one said, oh, I would squash you like a bug for your job. And it just made me laugh. And I thought, why am I taking this so to heart?
Yeah, no, so you need that, the last component of it. And I think that because I had that very strange relationship with my dad, I was always looking for that fatherly figure with desire and disdain at the same time.
Oh my God. And we are, okay, we're going to have to do this. This is a 2-part podcast. I'm going to go ahead and call it right now because I share this. I share that love must come with pain.
Yeah. But what I meant to say is the figure of the mentor as opposed to sponsor. And I split the sponsoring side. So Mike White was a great sponsor that act as a mentor because he but the mentors outside of the company, people that have lived, that care for you, and they only have your well-being as a score. Because the sponsor, I mean, Mike was amazing, and he still had a fiduciary responsibility with PepsiCo at the time, just like I do sometimes. So the whole notion of having someone externally that cares for you, that has no agenda whatsoever, was something that I found late in life, and it changes your life, because these are the people that are going to not tell you very much, but they're going to ask you the really, really, really tough questions.
Yeah. So I once had a coach say to me, it was my first executive coach. And he said to me, Carla, Dell is not your mom and dad. And it's true in the sense that you're saying right now, in terms of the importance of having a mentorship outside of work, where you can seek the sort of relationship that you need and the encouragement that you need. But that statement also works the other way around. And what I initially thought you were saying is that sometimes we repeat patterns, relationship patterns in our lives at work, and they play out with our relationships with our bosses if we're not careful.
That's right. That's right. In my particular case, initially, again, it's a very youthful way of, your parents can do no wrong, your boss can do no wrong.
Exactly.
And then as you begin to grow, just like you looked at your parents and go like, oh my God, they're human. They have all sorts of mistakes and issues. The same thing happens with bosses and all that. So it's really important what you're saying, maintaining very clear perspective of
a healthy
who you are
perspective.
and how other people are with you.
Yeah. Okay. So we have to talk about your background. We have to talk about how you became the amazing man that you are. Obviously, you're from Puerto Rico. You mentioned your father was from Spain, but I want to hear more about your upbringing and what that was like and how you got to reach the levels that you did as an immigrant.
So I was born in Cadiz, Spain, where my father, this is the land of my father, as I described it, even to this day. I moved to Puerto Rico. My mom was Puerto Rican. I moved to Puerto Rico when I was 6, and I had this ridiculous argument with my dad. He was saying, "You're a Spaniard that grew up in Puerto Rico," and I said, "No, I'm a Puerto Rican that happened to be born in Spain." I mean, ridiculous stuff, and he would be insulted, and I would be so. I mean, it was just ridiculous stuff. That I came again in retrospect, and it has helped me understand him quite a bit more. I think he suffered from depression because he was way too way too dogmatic, a lot of rage. And then one day, as I grew up, I went back to Cadiz, which is funny enough. San Juan, Puerto Rico, was built with the same blueprint as Cadiz, and I went back as a man, and I looked at it and I saw it so small. I saw it even smaller than Puerto Rico, and that when I saw the smallness of his world and understood how difficult it must have been for him to come from a place where everybody knows your name, everything is close, everybody goes to the same schools, everybody knows who your father, your grandfather, your uncle, your aunt, where your last name meant something. From there to go to Puerto Rico, San Juan, much bigger than Cadiz. Cadiz has 100,000 inhabitants. The city of San Juan, on its own, it's 1.2. It's still small, but the scale that he must have seen. And oh, and by the way, he went to work for his wife's father's business, in a culture where you use English and Spanish almost interchangeably, and it looks to the US as opposed to the rest of Europe. And when I saw how dramatic that must have been for him, I was able to understand him more. So, but he was extremely strict. Didn't want me to move outside. So when I said I'm going to school in the U.S., my mother and my uncle were the ones that helped me with the financial aid because we couldn't afford it. So the argument with him was, it's better to be. There's a saying in Spanish, cabeza de ratón que cola de león. So small fish, big pond. What the same. And I, again, was incredibly arrogant at the time. He said, it's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion. And I said, what if you want to be the head of a lion? You have to start in the tail first. I mean, horrible. I still think about it, and it just, because it was not even a fair fight, because he was seeing the world from his perspective, and mine was, I shouldn't. I'm telling you this, and I'm still going like,
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a much younger Antonio, but very strict, very Catholic, and I went to the States. I graduated from LSU at the time. I went there because a couple of my friends were there, and they gave us great financial aid. Because and then probably one of the most strikes of providence or luck or whatever you call it was the fact that I came from LSU. My parents got into some economic situations and all that, so I couldn't stay. I wanted to go to law school. I couldn't stay in the United States. I had to return. I started law school in the University of Puerto Rico. I wanted to be a history teacher. Well, I was going to go to law school at night. And then there was a political strike that closed the University of Puerto Rico for about a year. At that time, I couldn't find a job as a teacher, not even in my high school. And someone's told me they're looking for people like you, which I don't know what it meant, in a company called Procter and Gamble.
Ah,
I didn't know what Procter and Gamble was. The only business courses that I had taken was economics, because I was super intellectually stimulated by that, but I never took any business courses. I was going to be a lawyer and change the world as a lawyer. And I went in and I took the test that they normally take. I said things in that interview that if someone would tell me today, I probably would not have hired myself. like, why are you going to law school? How are you going to manage law school and this? What are you going to do when you graduate from law school? I said, well, I'll become a lawyer for Procter and Gamble. I mean, it was just really, it was, anyway, the truth of the matter is that I got in and it took me, I don't know, girl, I think 10 years to actually come to terms with the fact that marketing is something that I really enjoy, because for many, many, many years, my sense of identity was determined by my father's perception of what I should have been, which was a lawyer. So
Yeah.
I had been at P&G for several years. I was already a brand manager and I had a kid. I mean, and my father will still describe me, this is my son who goes to law school.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, it took me a very long time to act. So it was kind of like, I'm doing this, but in reality, I still need to figure out what else to do. And over time, I came to terms with, there are things about our craft that I'm passionate about. I love the analytics. I love the understanding of the customer's mind. I love the creative angles of it. I even love the how to get things done within a corporation. And then from I will tell you, it was 10, 15 years into my career that I said, no, this is what I want to be and this is what I'm going to do. The moment that you do, then you put more intentionality to it, and I think that's what propelled the rest of the story, if you will.
Yeah. Given your passion, that shocks me. I never would have seen you as the reluctant marketer. I too identified, mine was a little different. I identified as a sales GM. And my first job was actually as a divisional CMO. I didn't actually grow up through marketing. And so I saw myself very much, for the longest time, I would say, oh, I'm a sales GM in marketers clothing. Like I wouldn't even admit. And even as much as I enjoyed it, it was very hard for me. And it was strange. It was an identity thing. Like I had seen myself as something different.
When you grow up in consumer goods, marketing is not a career, is a means to an end.
Mm,
You want to be a GM. And most marketers come either from the commercial side where you were or from the
yeah.
marketing side. That's, by the way, most of the CEOs in CPG, even to this day, come from those two areas. It was when I was at PepsiCo, I was working for Indra, and I said I want to be a marketer, but you had already been division CMO. There is at the time, now there is, but there is no corporate CMO, and that's when I decided to. And she
Wow.
wanted me. She actually wanted me to take a line job.
Wow. So the job didn't exist when you took it?
I'm sorry.
The job did not exist when you took it, the
No, no, no,
CMO
no,
job?
no. I was the CMO of the international division. There were CMOs at the division level. There was not a global
Yeah.
CMO of PepsiCo, and so they were
Yeah.
not going to give me that job. So that's
Oh,
what she wanted me to do, is to move into the general management side of it. And I said, no, actually, I am a marketer. And that's when I joined Visa to become the first CMO and all that. But that was another inflection point. How do you want to spend your hours? The way that you spend your hours as a CMO and the type of issues that you deal with are fundamentally different than when you are the CEO. And listen, I love the fact that my boss loves what he does. He's going to make significantly more money than I will ever make. But I don't want his life. I really don't. The way that he spends his hours and the types of issues that he spends his time with, I rather do it with the people, with the issues that I do than his job. So that's also an important inflection point that we all go through.
yeah. Okay, so we're talking quite a bit about work and connection to work. Your team shared with me a study that has been done recently at HP, and I want to talk about it a little bit. It's called the Work Relationship Index. Tell me a little bit about what prompted this study and the information that you found, because I found it to be part of why we started this podcast.
Right after the pandemic, where everyone's relationship with work dramatically changed. We were working from home, not an office. Then this thing hybrid was invented. Then the divisions that we still have to this day, this, and that. And we're a technology company where what we create is tools for work at the end of the day. Even within the context of your personal computers or personal printers, 60% of your time is on work-related matters. Maybe not for your company, but organizing the family agenda, paying bills, helping your kids with homework, whatever it may be. So we said let's figure out how people are feeling, and what we found out was that only 27 the first year, 28 the second year, people could say that they had a positive relationship with work. A lot is being talked about and about work-life balance. This is different. This is the way that you spend your hours when you are at work. And since we are spending more time at work than what we are with any of the other dimensions that makes us who we are, figuring out how we make that part more meaningful so that people can feel more fulfilling became a very interesting marketing challenge for us to sort out. And what we found out is that there are very specific things that determine whether you're fulfilled at work or not. Number one, whether you find that there's a sense of purpose in what you're doing relative to what the company is doing. But this is not I'm here to save the world. No, it's about the work that I'm doing is making a very meaningful contribution to the company that I am. If I feel that that is the case, I'm anchored in purpose. It's a very narrow definition. Number two is, do I derive a sense of community when I'm working? And again, this is very specific. This is not about we have a group of people and we're going to have drinks after work. That's not it. It is when we're at work, do I feel that I am working with teams together to achieve those goals that are in line with the company purpose and mind? So the whole notion of how do we work together. The third one is balance. But balance is not time at home versus time at work. Is the time that I am at work, I am devoting most of it to things that are important and meaningful. Today, that same data will tell you that less than 50% of our time, you and I, even at our senior levels, will find that it's really really meaningful. So if for example we were to say, you and I were to say, if we move from 50 to 60 to 65, you change your perception of work immediately. The last dimension of professional fulfillment is having the environment, and technology plays a part, as you would imagine, to create more moments of flow. Where it's not work-life balance. We've all felt that I am so immersed in my task. It is about deep thinking, creative thinking, and all that I lose sense of time. Very few people today would say that their current roles and the infrastructure devoted to doing that job will enable them to feel fulfilled. So that's kind of what the work relationship index showed us, and it creates for a very beautiful fertile ground for technology to play a very meaningful role in improving the amount of time that people are spending at work, whether you're at home or whether you're in an office.
Yeah. So this is super key information, I think, for leaders to consider as we think about the future of work and what our people really need from us. It's alarming to think that 3/4 of the population is dissatisfied, pretty much, if I'm stating that correctly. So what is your wish, Antonio? given the amazing career that you've had, given where we are today with respect to work and our relationship to work, what's your hope for the future?
At a very deeply personal and work level, I just wish that my daughters and now my grandkids are able to live life to the fullest, that they are able to pursue those things that they feel they're important for them, and that we create a society that allows them to do so. So whether that is, the work that I do with my daughters and now with my grandkids, or the work that I do at my workplace, or the work that I do more broadly at the community level, that's what I'm that's what I'm about. It's hard work. It is, again, we go through historical moments where things become a bit harder than other times. But again, it's like Martin Luther King used to say, the arc of history leans the right way, but it doesn't happen by spontaneous generation. We got to be pulling it down so that it does.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
as simple and as hard as it may be.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am grateful that we have not just leaders, but people like you in the world. I think that, the impact that you made on my life personally, I can't imagine the impact that you're making on the folks at HP and your team there, and also the marketplace. I just feel it gives me hope to know that there are people out there with a platform that care about the same things that I do. So thank you so much, Antonio, for your time today. I feel like we could I have so many more questions, but I want to respect your precious time.
Anytime, Carla, and I feel the same way. We need more people like you in the world, and we need. I told you, I'm going to continue to bother you until you assume the big chair that you deserve and you get rid of your portfolio.
Okay, I'm going to call you after this because we're going to have to strategize. Um, okay. Thank you again for your precious time. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and I look forward to keeping an eye on what you're doing at HP and to the future of work.
Well, and we'll be looking after you as well. We need you very, very much. In fact, more than ever, as you know.
No, thank you.
We'll see you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh my
Bye-bye.
gosh, thank you.
Thank y'all for listening today. If you're so inclined, please follow, subscribe, download, share, all of the things so that we can keep going. We appreciate your support so much. If you're interested in learning more, go to thecoeffect.co.